Well, hello and good afternoon. Boy, what a couple weeks it's been. I thought I was going to do a bunch more videos and coffee talks, but as you may have noticed in my last talk, I was kind of out of it, even when I was trying to come back into it. I missed some things. One of the things I was really trying to get across with the choosing your gurus or mentors or your leaders or your teachers wisely is that it's important to make sure that if they are teaching you something or sharing something with you, that they actually walk the talk. For instance, I've been telling everybody to get the hell out of the city. For someone who was raised in the city, that's a pretty striking experience to make out into the wilderness and get away from the city because of what's gonna be coming to the cities and has been coming to the cities. You've just gotten the initial aspect of that, which is the pricing of food. The pricing of food, if you live on your land and you're able to raise animals and raise chickens, and during the growing season you're able to grow plants and vegetables, and you have trees and you get fruits, and you actually have your own little Eden. We're going to be getting into a point where you're going to have to find your own Eden. You're going to have to find it, and you're going to have to protect it because they're going to want to take it away from you. What I am sharing with you, I am sharing from experience. I've had a variety of experiences throughout the world. I've dealt with a number of cultures throughout the world. As you know from my experiences, if you read my books, for instance, The Bamboo Chest or So You Want to Be a Reality TV Star, where I talk about the media and the world and politics and how the media has been lying to us for much, much longer than the last 10 years, according to Trump. Much longer than that. As a matter of fact, from its creation, in terms of a informative source, we start to realize that when the military propaganda machine takes it over, it is no longer a form of information. It's actually a tool of behavioral modification and direction. And the key is to be able to discern the difference between propaganda and intelligence or information collection. And then after that, have the clear thinking, have the critical thinking ability to be able to break down information into a form that you can use. That's the reason that I not only try to give you the what, the who, the where, but I also try to give you the why. Because when you understand the why, that's when you can truly take steps that you yourself are making decisions on. So that last part, which is actually, I'm sorry, because I was totally out of it last week. This flu that's been flying around, it might not be a flu, it might be a next evolution of COVID, because COVID didn't just die off. It's changing, and it's continuing to change. And one of the indicators when I look at something that's man-made as compared to something that's been there for thousands of years, like if you get the cold, everybody has the same exact symptoms of the cold. But when you have something that is so new and so young that hasn't had time to go through every genetic scheme, it's different and it has different symptoms. Some people have been saying it's a 10-day. For me, it's been almost like the 2-week. At the same time, I've also been, working on my farm and doing the work that I need to do throughout the day. I have not let it stop me. It's just that by the end of the day, I'm not really into freaking talking. And as you may have noticed, I missed that part about making sure that whoever you listen to, don't just listen to them because they seem knowledgeable. Listen to them because they are actually putting into play the information that they are selling to you or they are sharing with you, as I am doing with you. I am telling you things based on my personal experience because I've seen it. I've seen it succeed. I've seen it fail. And I warn on which either or of what you have to be prepared to deal with as you come about making those decisions, like moving into the country and where best to go, which we'll be talking about because I've been advising a lot of friends until I really realized what's been really happening in South America. Yeah, you might want to go down like Paraguay or Uruguay or Argentina or Patagonia or Chile. No way in hell. From the stuff that I've learned, you don't want to be there. Because what's going to be coming over the next 10 to 20 years is going to make Palestine in the late 40s and in the early and through the 50s seemed like child's play. Because the same players are going to be there. And I said it. I'm going to put a link so you can go and listen to my initial talk about the Plan Andina and what it really means. They call it, in South America, they're calling it a conspiracy theory. That no, the Israelis are not burning the lands in Patagonia so that they can buy the land for cheap. And the thing about it is people think, oh, they're just, making some kind of private deal. This is a migration. This isn't like, oh, a few Israelis think, wow, you know what? In our book, A Jewish State, the Der Judenstaat, that it says in there, I'll read it to you right now. It says it right there. See, let's read it together. It's on, on this one, the latest, I think this one came out in 2004. This copy, The Jewish State, by Theodor Herzl, who was an Austrian journalist. Sorry, I used to call him a German. He was actually an Austrian. It says here, Palestine or Argentine? Shall we choose Palestine or Argentine? We shall take what is given us and what is selected by Jewish public opinion. The society will determine both these points. Argentine is one of the most fertile countries in the world. Extends over a vast area, has a sparse population and a mild climate. The Argentine Republic would derive considerable profit from the cession of a portion of its territory to us. The present infiltration of Jews has certainly produced some discontent, and it would be necessary to enlighten the Republic on the intrinsic difference of our new movement. So here is someone who is supposedly moving all the Jewish people out of Europe towards the hoped dream, as he described back in 1897 when this book came out, that Palestine will be the place for everybody to move. But yet he's looking at the Jewish people as Jews, as other kinds of people, even though he's a Jew. But see, he's actually a Zionist, which does not necessarily mean a Jew. And I'll describe to you why that's very disconcerting, because people say, well, if you're against Israel, that means you're anti-Semitic or you're anti-Jewish, which is total crap. Because the ones who are true Orthodox Jews do not like Zionists for the very reason that they know, because they practice the Torah, that the Zionists are not Jew-friendly. As a matter of fact, the ones who are the most Zionist-friendly have been anti-Semites, who would be described as very anti-Jewish. Yeah, that's why the Nazis were more than happy to help the Zionists make their move to Palestine. That's the reason that the Nazis had an office in Palestine in the 1930s, until the Brits basically took over everything. And the other thing you should be thinking about, if Israel is so great for Jews, why is it that the only dissenter during the vote in Parliament was a Jew by the name, who was Sir Montague? Lord Balfour was the one who was pushing for the creation of the state of Israel in Palestine. But the only Jew in all of the government and the Parliament was Sir Montague. And he was the one who was totally against it. Why would that be? Think about that. And think about what is happening and why Lord Balfour and the Rothschilds especially were so excited about paying for it initially, until they started getting funding from all around the world, for the state of Israel to be created. The reason is because the benefit of oil. And the Rothschilds are into control and power. The Rothschilds also, for years, even before they became the Rothschilds, had an understanding of chaos theory. And you really have to understand what chaos theory is to truly appreciate it. Because chaos theory for a lot of people is something they can't really put their head around. Because if you're a practitioner of chaos theory, you're into creating conflict. See, the normal human being is actually into having a wonderful life, eating well, having good relations, conversation, interaction, It's a tribal thing. We are herd animals. We like to be normally around other people in a good situation. But if you get traumatized and you come from traumatic life and lifestyles, you don't want to be around people. And when you have a culture that has been constantly been attacked and continually is moving and moving and moving, they breathe chaos. And they've learned how to use chaos toward their benefit. And that is what is happening right now with the war, with the Epstein-Israeli war in Iran. This is a unilaterally controlled by Israel and everybody who want in deep state, because the deep state is the military-industrial complex, and the Zionists are the biggest holders of the military-industrial complex. This goes all the way back to World War I, by the way. It's very well documented. All you got to do is ask. And now you can ask Google. Just type in Zionism, Zionists, military-industrial complex, history. Stuff will start coming up. Great books. I'm going to put links for you to start checking out the understanding of money, what money really is, what it means to you, how money has been used against you, how money has been used into, and when I say money, it's actually fake money, because gold and silver is real money. But we're talking about fiat currency, and that's the stuff that banks give. Because banks have learned that they can have a number on a ledger that represents how much money they have. But then they can loan out a bunch of money that now is creating money, which is fake money, right? That's the fiat currency that's being created. And the only way it's able to survive is through confidence and trust. This is very important because we've already seen the beginning of this failure of trust and this falling of grace of the US dollar having been the reserve currency, because it was weaponized against the Russians. The reasons the Russians are not so against the dollar right now at this very moment is because they're excited, because they're hoping that they're probably going to try and get their money back that they lost when it was all locked down under the Biden administration because of their war with Ukraine. So what we're having right now, which is very important to understand, where I had said before that Israel is going to move to Patagonia. And I got a friend who says he couldn't believe it, because it's like, why would he go to Patagonia? It's cold and it's uncomfortable. I mean, they're in Israel right now, where you got lemons and all that kind of stuff. But see, the thing about it is, that's not the understanding of who these people are. These people thrive on chaos, and they thrive on chaos when they're in charge of it. Right now, they're not in charge of it, because what they did is they attacked Iran that they thought they could take, which they could possibly take if Americans are willing to fight this war. I hope to God we do not get deeper into this, because if we do, the whole objective of that is to destroy the United States in the same manner that Russia was destroyed when they were convinced to get into the war in World War I. If the Tsar did not get into World War I, the Bolsheviks most likely would not have had a breeding ground with which to gain a foothold and grow so quickly. And especially if he didn't wimp out and let everything go back and allow the Bolsheviks to take over. Because once the Bolsheviks took over, they knew they had to get rid of the Tsar, and that's why they killed him. That's how the Bolsheviks work. That's also how the Zionists work. Zionists and the Bolsheviks, there's no difference. That's why they were so much best buddies. That's why Bibi, back in the 90s, told the Soviets, no, it was in the late 80s, told the Soviets that he wanted to have the United States destroyed. Think about that. They have no loyalties to us, and yet, this is the thing that just pisses me off. The only reason that Israel is still in existence is because of all the money they've stolen from us through our Federal Reserve and through our IRS. Our tax dollars have funded Israel. Think about that. Your tax dollars that you can't even feed your family has been going to Israel, where they don't even have to work. They can get free land. They can get everything they want because it's all bankrolled by us. And yet, Just like the spoiled kid who has no respect for the parents who work their ass off to get the money, to treat them to college, to treat them to their first car, they actually bitch about their parents. That's what Israel is to the United States. Think about it. The spoiled silver spoon kid. That's what Israel is. And it's time for them to frickin' wake up. But they're not going to wake up if they're allowed to go to Patagonia. And I hope to God people in Argentina and Chile wake up. Because if they don't wake up, exactly what happened in the Middle East, in Palestine, Palestine will become the new Patagonia. What does that mean? And this is very important. Because while Israel needed to be 100% supported by the United States because they have nothing there. There's no oil. There's no benefit except what? Lemons? And them trying to get you to send money to Israel and buy some artwork from Tel Aviv? Yeah. That's bullshit. They have nothing. They've just been living off our system because they know how to run the system, as you're seeing in New Jersey by other reporters who are showing how they're taking advantage of the system in New Jersey. But they're on their way to Patagonia, and they're burning the lands in Patagonia because Millet, who they bought off down there too, created an act, a law that said that if land was destroyed by fire or other natural events, cataclysmic events, that land could be sold at a much cheaper rate than other lands. And most importantly, could be sold to foreigners. So you're seeing a number of Israelis buying up that land. And it's just like Herzl had defined. And now they are going to that as the next step. And what will happen in South America, and that's why my friends that I used to say, yeah, at least you could get away in Paraguay. Now I'm not even saying it's going to be safe in Paraguay. Because every country around is going to be a freaking fireball. Just in the same way that they did it in the Middle East. Remember, divide and conquer. They have very specific strategies, and they do not change these strategies. I'm going to give you a little bit about my history with the freaking Mossad and the IDF. When I was in Central America, I was trained by IDF. I was trained by Mossad. Why? Because we had a deal with them to come over and help us train in counterinsurgency and counterterrorism. So they came over and trained us. And by the way, I'm getting fed up. Everybody talks about how great the IDF. You may have noticed they really aren't good fighters. They're just good at murdering defenseless civilians over in Gaza. They're really good at hunting down former Nazis and shooting them in their bed. So they're good assassins. That's what they're at. That's what they're really good at. But when it comes into a full-on firefight, if it wasn't for us sticking in and coming to their rescue each and every big battle that they had, because they threatened a nuclear bomb against us, yeah, the Samson option, think about this. Their history is based on Samson and Mossad. What is the similarity between both of them? That's why it's basically a death cult. That's also why the Judeo-Christians, that's this Judeo-Christian movement that's gone circling around Zionism. Yeah, and a Christian Zionist. It's kind of like, who's going to be the winner? Is it going to be the Jews getting their Mashiach? Or is it going to be the Christians getting their Messiah? Which is it? Because they're kind of like banking and gambling on who's going to get the... But what's most important, they have to have their Holocaust. They have to have their apocalypse. And once they have that, then when the total freaking embers of the earth are just glowing, then suddenly this Messiah will come and save them all. Right? Oh, but most importantly, before that happens, 2/3 of the world's population, don't trust me, listen to the rabbis, because I've been listening to a lot of rabbis these last 2-3 weeks. Man, one after the other telling me how the whole plan is to have the Christians kill the Muslims and the Muslims kill the Christians and thin each other out. And then whoever's left can be the Goyim slaves, the non-Jewish worker slaves for the, quote, true believers. Oh, and if you're not a true believer and you haven't been a good Jew, that means you're also in trouble too. And I think that's the reason that Zionists have actually been successful, is because I have a lot of friends who are Jews. But what I have noticed is very few of them are actual good Jews. Kind of like good Christians, like reading the Bible all the time. I'm not a good Christian. I believe in Christ. I believe the tenets of Christianity. But I don't go to Bible school. I went to freaking Christians, was it Campus After Dark. Now I've got to check on that because I'm starting to realize that actually was a freaking Judeo-Christian kind of thing. Because I got a friend from high school, and he was trying to get me into it, and he's a freaking total believer on this. I can't even talk to him right now. Because he thinks freaking like, oh, Israel is like God. Yeah. That's how sick and twisted this has become. When you have a cult, they don't think any about things. They don't critically think. The whole idea about a cult is to not get you to think about things. Like, in order for the Messiah to come, the world has to be destroyed. And, well, I have friends and family who aren't Jewish. They're not good Christians. Depending on which belief you're going to get, who's going to be the winners at the end of this. Is it going to be the Jews or is it going to be the Christians, right? Based on which is it going to be Jesus coming back or is it going to be the Jewish Messiah that they don't believe was Christ? This is how this game is being played. But it's being played in reality because Zionists are different from the true believers. The true believers are saying God will bring the Jewish people to Israel and they will have Israel. the children of Abram and Abraham. Well, those people are not the Ashkenazi Jews. Genetically. That's the reason they outlawed the DNA testing of all Israelis. Because it would come back like, oh, shoot, we have no right to this land. And the people that we're killing, those are actually the people who genetically are supposed to be here. Yeah, think about that. Oh, man. But this is the reason I say that the Zionists can't have good things. Because the Zionists are all about chaos. They're the shit stirrers. That's the reason the Rothschilds love them. That's the reason Lord Balfour was all for sending Jews to Palestine. Because Balfour knew that if we can keep all the Arabs fighting each other and keep them all divided, we can make good deals for each one of them to get the best oil reserves from each one of them. Oh, but first we have to get them together because these are all a nomadic people, right? Like Faisal and all those. Yeah, they were just a bunch of freaking tribal people moving across the desert. They didn't own the land. Be kind of like the Lakota moving across the land. The Lakota didn't own the land, but suddenly being forced to live on a reservation, right? Think about that. Well, the Arabs were forced to live on a reservation, and if you were lucky, you got really good land. If you got crappy land, you were in trouble. And probably you ended up fighting with all your neighbors, which is actually part of the plan by Lord Balfour and BP. It's all about the oil, it's all about the money, it's all about the power and control. And in South America, we have something even better. And that's gold and silver. So now, if they get Patagonia, let me ask you a quick question. What is the origin of the name Argentina? Quick, 3, 2, 1. Those of you who have said Argentum, that is on the periodic table. If you'd like to go, it's ARG, I think, or AR, yeah. Argentum is silver in Latin. Yeah. And Patagonia, Chile, Argentina, absolutely, has tons of silver. Peru, Bolivia. That's what created all the markets with China. China was trading back and forth to get as much because of all the Spanish, all the conquistadores, the Portuguese, the Spanish, trading with China. Because originally their money was copper in Asia. We're talking way back, right? During the Ming or the Han Dynasty. And you've probably seen these because it's kind of like a good luck thing if you follow the Taoist style of belief and understanding of feng shui and all that kind of stuff. geomancy. Is that geomancy? Yeah. Yeah. And you'll have those coins on cords on strings. Well, those cords on strings, that was real money. But it was so heavy, so they didn't want to keep on carrying copper. Well, what's lighter than copper? Silver. So suddenly they started getting, and it's rare. So they started getting a lot of silver, and this silver was coming in. And it was coming in from South America. Well, guess what? If you own Patagonia, you not only have beautiful land, you also have access to true money. Gold and silver, gold and silver, gold and silver. And in order to get that, and to get the best deals, you're going to keep everybody fighting each other. So everything that Simón Bolívar was crying about, that he couldn't unite South America, like George Washington and the colonials and the founding fathers were able to do with the 13 colonies, he was unable to do with South America, and that's why there are countries all separate and enemies. For instance, my cousin, Army Special Forces, he fought in the Cenepa War against Peru. That war was about another war, which was the one that my grandfather was in, which was to regain the Amazon that was lost to Peru during World War II. So when they said it was a world war, it was a world war. Various wars all over the world. And you're going to see that happening again. That's what's happening right now. This is the fire. This is the creation of World War V. And let me clear this up. People keep on calling this World War III. It is not World War III. World War I was World War I. World War II was World War II, well recognized. World War III was the war against the Soviet Union. We won that. I was part of that one. World War IV was GWAT. That was World War IV. The Great War Against Terrorism, right? Now we're going to have this war, and that's World War V. And it's going to be a rat's nest. It's just going to be chaos. Oh, doesn't that fit with the program? So while we're all in this chaos, the Israelis, who have totally screwed everything up in the Middle East, where it's all going to be a big fire sale over there, are going to be working their way, just like Adolf Hitler did, to Patagonia. Except they're going to get Patagonia. Well, he was like up in Bariloche, in a little bit further north. But they'll get Patagonia, the wine country, cattle country. Oh, and most importantly, because the new Palestinian will be the Mapuche Indians. So, because they're going to be stealing the land from the Mapuche, because that is mainly their area. And that's why it's just ridiculous that they're blaming the Mapuche, saying that they're doing it as a resistance movement by lighting fires there. They would never do that. That's like burning your own house. They're smart enough not to do that. But when you got IDF soldiers being caught on film, as you saw in that episode, I'll link to it at the end of this episode. Go watch it. You'll see the videos. You'll also, if you understand Spanish, you'll see how there's a woman that they're interviewing who's in tears, and she's describing how the Israelis are coming to the country, lighting fires, destroying the land, and they're buying it on the cheap, basically stealing it from the people. Okay? This is some evil crap. And they're doing this for two reasons. They are getting hammered by Iran, and they will continue to get hammered by Iran. Right now, if you're not paying attention to the news in Tel Aviv, everybody in Tel Aviv is getting the hell out of there. Where do you think they're going? They're going to the places they probably have already invested in Patagonia. They're going to hang out in Buenos Aires for a while. They'll just hang out with the Jewish community locally, and then they'll just grab a vehicle and drive west and start putting out stakes, claiming their land, just like up here in Alaska, right? That's what's going to happen. That's my little forecast. But when they're in there, it's just going to get bad. Because remember, they practice chaos theory in order to keep everybody around them off guard. Always fighting everybody else except the people who started the fire. That's how they play. They've learned to do this for thousands of years. If you're in South America, especially if you're in southern South America, I would look at other options. Right now, I've got some I could suggest. I'll talk about them again. And some other ones I've been looking at, especially since that's not really an option. God, I would love to live in Patagonia. No way. No way. I mean, there's a political consideration because of the way the governments are. But you can work with that. But when you actively know that a culture that has thrived and is they're thriving while they're doing this, but they also have the belief that when they achieve their apocalypse, that they will be rewarded, they will not stop. You need to understand that. This is not a like, oh, okay, we got our land. Like, they had Israel, but they fucked it up. And now they're going to fuck up more of it. But they're going to do it in Patagonia. So if you got land in Uruguay, in Argentina, and Paraguay, Bolivia, Chile, Peru, they're going to destabilize the area even more than it is now. Because when you've got destabilization, what happens? Land is cheap, and you get really good fire sales. That includes gold and silver. People want to get out of there. They're going to sell you stuff that they would have held on to if they were calm and relaxed. Remember, that's the reason I'm constantly telling you, I have to do my own meditation too. I have to relax. I have to ground. I have to center. Because I'm seeing a lot of stuff. I mean, I am seeing stuff that is just unbelievable what I'm seeing. That I think the average person, if they knew what I know right now, would be losing their minds. But I'm calm. I'm sharing my calmness with you to just take a deep breath. Decide on what you're going to do. Look at the facts. I will give you some links, again, as I always do, in the pinned comment, the first one. Read them, follow them, check them out. I'll even give you a link to go pick up a copy of this book. You can download it, A Jewish State. Read the philosophy of what they are doing. I'll also give you a link to a new one I got turned on, The Synagogue of Satan. That's unbelievable. I'm reading that one. It's just like, it explains how and why. There are two Jews. There are the converted Jews, and there are the true Semitic Jews. They are not the same people. But guess who's 90% of the population of Jews? It's the Ashkenazi. The Ashkenazi are converted people. They were converted not because they really believed in the religion. They converted because they didn't want to get annihilated by King Rurik. They also didn't want to get annihilated by the Muslims, and they didn't want to get annihilated by the Christians. And they realized that the Jews would trade with everybody. And they thought that was good. And that was good. But somebody got to the point that instead of just being the bankers, they realized that, why are we just the bankers? Why don't we become the people who control the monarchy? And once we control the monarchy, then we can start wars around the world. And then we can control all those other ones. That's the reason they're taking out Iran, because they don't control Iran. That's why they took out Venezuela, because they didn't control Venezuela. If the Rothschilds and the Bank of England does not control that bank, and Basel don't control that bank in that nation, it's an enemy state as far as they're concerned. And then suddenly they're on the terrorist list, even though they haven't done a damn thing outside. I mean, has it been 47 years? Did we get nuked yet? Do you think in 47 years, Iran would have nuked somebody? At least Israel. Did they even freaking nuke Israel? No. They were just basically being tyrants and dictators to their own people. Is that our business? Nope. Same reason it's nobody else's business what happens in the United States. Because it's our business. But that's not the case right now. Because our government is totally owned. And people say, oh, well, it's owned by Israel. No. Israel, remember I was talking on a ship? You got the captain and you got the XO. Well, the XO is the guy who actually does the dirty work. He goes to the seaman and says, this is what we're going to do, and this is the direction of the ship, and this is what's going to happen. It's the captain who tells the XO what to do. So Israel is the XO, and they're telling us where we're supposed to be going. That pisses me off, because that means it's the city of London has totally regained total control of the United States, even after we had a revolution against them back in 1776, right? When we defaulted on our debt to them because they were trying to take over our currency and they were trying to force us onto the British currency when we actually had a colonial currency. And because of that colonial currency, we had profound abundance. And as Franklin went to Parliament and was asked by one of the parliamentary members who actually was tied buddies with the Rothschilds and asked him, why is America so successful? Why are the colonials so successful in America? He says, because we have our own currency. And so we just trade. We don't have credit being used as an enslaving device, which is what the UK and specifically the Bank of England has been using against everybody. That's how they slave the world, by credit. They give the credit, but then you never pay it off, but you're constantly trying to pay it off. So all the stuff that the normal average person has to deal with in terms of trying to get a house, when before you would go out and get land, and then you would build on that land. Does anybody remember, or did your dad or your grandparents ever tell you that Eisenhower promised us a 3-day work week and everybody would own a house? Free and clear. Did you know that? That was a promise. President Eisenhower promised that. I think it was 3 days, maybe 4. I think it was a 3-day week, work week. 8 hours. Do we have that? They continue to steal from us, and until you say stop. That's why I've told you many, many times, do not pay your federal income tax. Oh my God, you can't say that. Don't pay your federal income tax. Well, what happened before we had federal income tax? Were roads not being built? Was shipping not happening? Were people not being abundant? Were people not having land? Were people not having freedoms? Yeah. All that's happened since we had the income tax, the federal income tax, is that we've gone into a bunch of wars. And those wars have been funded by your income tax, which I have repeatedly told you is a voluntary act. When you pay your federal income tax, it is a voluntary act. I'm going to put links. You can go and listen to 2 people on Redacted. That's that other show. They've done a good job of interviewing. Then I will also give you the link to go directly to. See, this is the way you start if you're going to demonstrate. See, going and talking in the streets and all that kind of stuff, yeah, that's nice. And they laugh at it and they let you do it. But when you say that I'm not going to pay my taxes anymore, and you have the legal right to not pay your taxes, and you might be pissed at first because you're telling me, God dang, you mean I did not have to pay taxes when I was making freaking 6-7 digits a year? And they were taking 50% or more? I could have used that money. I learned my lesson. And I'll flat out tell you, I haven't paid since 2000. I refuse to. And now it's a political statement. But it's in my legal right, as it is yours as an American citizen. The payment of federal income tax is your opportunity to say no, because it's a voluntary act, if you do not believe in your money being used to fund wars. It's that simple. And these are not wars to protect you. These are wars in order to make a very small group of people very wealthy. And they're using your own money. If you've been in business, you understand OPM, other people's money. These people are specialists. They're using OPM on you. But at least when you do business with somebody, you actually ask them if they will give you their money, as compared to intimidate them with lies to get you to give it to them. That's mafia tactics. Protection. Man, oh man. This world is definitely going on a very, very interesting course. So pay attention to what's going off in South America. If you've been thinking about making a run down there as your getaway plan, I would highly ask you to delve deeper into it. Talk to somebody who speaks Spanish. If you're going to move down there, why don't you learn Spanish? Wherever you go, learn the language first. It makes it better for you. I don't speak all these languages just because it's fun. Well, it is fun to me, actually. I like being able to talk to people in their own language and not just, oh, well, if you speak 500 words, that's good enough. Well, you know what? If you really want to understand a people, you need to get more than 500 words. But that's not that hard. It's not that hard. It's very easy. You learned how to speak your native language. How did you do that? You were a baby when it happened, and that's when you started. Guess what? That's the same way. Same techniques. Listening, repeating, catching an ear for the language. All these little techniques. If you'd like for me to teach you how to learn a language very fast, put a comment down below, and I will make a specific episode for you, which will be straight and to the point, showing you exactly how to learn a language in record time that would make you a super graduate at the Defense Language Institute, at the DLI. Oh, man, Edgar Casey. Ooh, we'll talk about that next time. Oh, and Sean, Ryan, and Coke. Okay, that'll be another opportunity. Oh, and 50 Shades of Depravity. That was going to be another freaking talk, but we'll talk about that later. Cannibalism, fads, following the money, the death cult. Oh, yeah, but we've talked about good Jews and bad Christians. Yeah, those are the supporters of Zionism. Absolutely. They have no idea. See, because that's the difference. It's like, well, they say they're for Israel, so I haven't been going to synagogue, and I haven't freaking been reading the Torah, and I haven't been doing my prayers, et cetera, et cetera. So, well, if somebody says, that Zion is for protection of these Jewish people, then I'm for it. Yeah, that's called making decision off of ignorance, which is no excuse. Oh, man, an Operation Mockingbird. We'll go into that one. Walter Cronkite, Joe Rogan, Sean Ryan. Oh, my gosh, so many. Sarah Adams. Man, Sarah Adams. Look at what she's doing. If you want to instill fear in people, tell them about all these terrorist attacks that are coming. Because you're able to do anything other than go get your CDC. I mean, your EDC. Go get your EDC. Carry a gun. Be legal. Some idiots pull something on you. Be ready to respond. That's all you can do. You're not going to be a super ninja. You're not going to be part of the SWAT team. You're not going to be the counterterrorism team member. If you are, you're being briefed by the people who are actually doing it professionally. You're not going to get briefed by Sarah Adams. Boom. Does that clear it up a little bit more for you? Who's actually just trying to get numbers because she's trying to pay off some bills. That's my view. But hey, we all got opinions, right? Okay, I think I got through most of it today, so pay attention for those of you and understand why they're doing this. It's all about chaos. It's chaos, it's chaos, it's chaos. Take a deep breath. I know it's heavy. You're looking at all the stuff that's happening right now. If you pray, pray. If you pray and you're praying well, you should be actually totally fine with everything. But also being very clear that this is not about helping Jews. It's not about helping Christians who are waiting for the Messiah. This is the death cult that is just trying to create chaos in a timely manner so that they can enjoy the fruits of their labors, which they've been doing pretty well, because if you were living in Israel up until now, you're getting a free card to do whatever you wanted. I hope that is going to stop, but it won't stop until the American people basically say we're fed up of paying them off for something that we owe them nothing for. Because actually what they're doing is so contrary to what is in the best interest of the United States. And it's soon going to be the worst interest of Latin America. So I would stay out of there, because there's going to be a lot of terrorist attacks. Remember what happened in Palestine. Just take Palestine in 1947 and take it all the way up to about 1955, 57, 58. And watch, like Ben-Gurion, famous statesman. Yeah, that guy was a freaking mass murderer. He was blowing up British barracks, apartments, civilians, killing civilians, British civilians. Yeah. And so, Americans, contractors in Qatar got killed, rocket coming in from Iran. Oh, and why? See, that's the thing about it, which is kind of stupid on Iran. Why would they send them over to Qatar? Unless somebody over there was trying to play the game so they could get this all going around. Because if you've got your own operators in Iran, which the Israelis did, and vice versa. That's why they were able to make pretty solid hits in Tel Aviv, because if the Israelis have good spies, don't you think that Iranians might have good spies too? This is going to be a very interesting week. It's going to be very important for you to remain calm, be clear thinking, look at all the things, and most importantly, I always go with follow the money, check and see who benefits, and what is the long game? What is the long game in here? The long game is the destruction of the United States. And also it's a wealth distribution, redirection. It's going to be moved out of the United States, and I'm getting the feeling that they might actually move it to where there is actual real money, silver and gold, which is in South America. But in order to do that, they have to have their stormtroopers do what their stormtroopers do best, because they don't know how to fight a war. What they know how to do is they know how to do terrorism, and they know how to do assassination. So the same thing they did in Palestine, they're going to be doing in Patagonia. But more importantly, they're going to be doing in the surrounding states, i.e. Argentina, Uruguay, Paraguay, Bolivia, Chile, and then into Peru too, just because of the wealth that's involved over there. And once they've got that tip locked up, plus they've also got Brazil, they pretty much have all that they really need. And they had to get into friggin' Venezuela because they didn't control Venezuela. And they don't have to control it completely, but they have to make sure it's in chaos. So has anything benefited Venezuela since we did the bombing and everything over there? Has it totally changed the government? No. Are you seeing anything happening over in Iran? I bet you what's going to happen is just going to be total chaos. There's just going to be a bunch of factions going to be fighting for years, which to Israel doesn't really matter. But by that time, they'll have totally moved out of there. Because remember, they're not the Semitic Jew. They're the Ashkenazi Jew. So the Ashkenazi Jew does not have any loyalty to Israel of the Bible. They just had loyalty to the Israel of Jewish state, as defined by Theodor Herzl, which, as we know, there are two options. Now that they burned up the first option, which was Palestine, they are going towards Patagonia for the next option. See, they've done their dirty work for the Rothschilds. All the wealth that has been pulled out of there for the Rothschilds going back to the early 1900s, before, during, and just after World War I. And they created all that crap. They've already are now going to be going into Patagonia to create their own dream world. Because remember, they were kicked out of Khazaria. And being kicked out of Khazaria, they went west. And that's why it explains why the Khazars, the Ashkenazis, have always been against people who are white. Have you noticed that? Where did that come from? It comes from the idea that the West is where the whites are, which means that the Khazars of the East, which is actually what they really are. Think about that. I'll put links for the books. You can check them out. I'll also put links for books on money, so you can understand the game of money and how they created the game of money and how that game of money has been actually a way that they have enslaved us. The free world, the West, and a little bit of the East. But the East are smart enough. The Chinese can give the Zionists and the central bankers a run for their money, as we're seeing with China. It's very interesting how they play. But there's going to be some very interesting financial games back and forth. I hope you're ready for it. Language. If you'd like me to do a quick course on rapid learning of languages from the get-go. My skill and my ability is always I could get fluency to the point that if they were talking to me on the phone, if it's a language that I've already been speaking within 30 days, I'm totally fluent with the dialect and the accent of that local area. And if it's a new language, it's about 3 months. And you won't be able to tell whatsoever on the phone. It's very easy to do. That's how kids learn. That's how kids learn. Do you think just because you're older you can't create those synapses in your brain? That's another misnomer. I used to believe it until I realized that all I had to do was start to imitate the actual believers, not just in the movement of the muscles in the mouth and the jaw and all that kind of stuff and the aspiration at that time, but also the body language. If you pick up the body language of a native speaker, you will speak like that native speaker. That's just the way it is. And in that, that's why when you're doing analysis of a people, you need to get into their body and into their mind. That's why my friend who can't believe that the Israelis are making the move to Patagonia because he's thinking from the point of view, well, God, it's oranges and the Mediterranean. But see, he's looking through his lens of his mind, which is he loves that. He lives for that. That's why he has his own special place in the Mediterranean, or did. I don't remember whether he still has it or not. But that's what he likes. So remember, you have to get out of your mind and look through that mind. And for a lot of people who don't understand evil or want to, the only reason I have the ability to deal with these people and understand these people and why they're doing what they're doing is because I've dealt with evil. It's kind of like, a lamb. You don't want to be a lamb when you have a wolf in the paddock, because the wolf is going to come and just eat that lamb. And if you've ever seen like a fawn being ripped apart by a wolf or a coyote, that's what's happening. The fawn cannot believe it's being eaten alive. That is an exact metaphor for people who can't believe that there's such evilness in this world. And it's there, and you need to know how to deal with it. That is the part when I bring up my combat experience, I am bringing it from the understanding of darkness and evil. Because when you're in that environment, that is the environment you're working in. And when you understand that environment, that's why there are people who are warriors, and then there are other people. That's why there's the warrior class that deals with this type of stuff. But you can't always rely on an army to do it, because if you do, you'll always be at the mercy of an army. And actually, that's the reason our Constitution was created, was to make sure that we, in the United States, was to make sure that we would never be subjugated by our own military. But I'm finding a lot of people are willing to sacrifice that freedom and that defense for a little bit of safety that people like Peter Thiel would be more than happy to take advantage of, to take control. Because people like Peter Thiel and his group of people in Silicon Valley that run all these things like Palantir and Alex Karp and all these little fucking scumbags, these little fucking nerds. Remember, these are people, they're a little bit younger than me, but Peter Thiel went to the high school right next to mine. I could have met him by 1 or 2 years if I was still in high school. But I'd already graduated a year by the time he was in high school, over in San Mateo High School. But I understand the Silicon Valley. I worked in there. I know these people. They're very disconnected. And the very scary part about it is because they're very disconnected, they don't understand the way the world works healthily. They contribute to this chaos. And they're easily played because since they're nerds and they never got over it, they're played by people who play to their ego. And let me tell you, Zionists and Israelis are really good at that. That's why they always come there. They always come to Silicon Valley to see who else they can get into their web. And Epstein was just... You think that Epstein was the only one? He's one of many, 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 many agents from Mossad. On that note, think about what I've said. Look at what you've got set up in your own life and how you're set up in terms of food, how you can be controlled by an outside element, your food, your fuel. Right now, I would highly suggest that if you don't want to get slammed this week, I would highly suggest going and filling up the tank in your vehicle. I did mine right when I found out. As a matter of fact, Also went to the bank in case they lock up the bank. If you haven't done that, I would highly suggest. And I would highly suggest not getting 20s. I would highly suggest getting 1s and 5s. Remember, big government is not your friend. The wars in this world are not there to defend you. They're there either to enslave another country or to impoverish your country. That's how these people are playing this game. Their objective is to totally impoverish the United States and take all the wealth that have been gained by the United States over the last 150 years. Because their view, the Rothschilds, the Bank of England, the City of London. Understand, type in the City of London and the origins of the City of London. It's an entity, it's a corporation unto itself, separate from the country of England. What other metropolitan area requires permission for the king of that country to enter? Think about that. Going back hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years. Whew. On that note, I touched on some of the subjects I'll be talking about later. I'm feeling a little bit better. I can still feel a little in my throat. I've also started doing my recordings, of audio renditions of my books so that they'll be available on Audible. So stay tuned. I should have the first book done in the next 3 weeks and have it up and ready for you to download if you wanted to listen to the Bamboo Chest as compared to read it. And at the time, you can just listen to it while you're driving or at work, etc. But keep your eyes open. Don't automatically take what the media gives you as just straight value. Ask yourself, why is this happening? And why are they telling you about this? And most importantly, how will it affect you in the next month, and in the next year, and the next 5 years? If I had the money to go and buy a ranch in Patagonia, and I know what I know now, would I still go and buy a ranch in Patagonia? Nope. So that's an understanding for me because I know what's going to happen down there. I would have to live like an Israeli during the 6-Day War. Anyway, on that note, God bless. Watch your 6. Nobody's in control right now, in case you haven't noticed. But see, that's how these people thrive. The ones who create the chaos. Because they knew the chaos was coming and they've already prepared. And that's why I said they were always starting the burning in Patagonia. They've been doing it for quite a while with the idea that they're moving, and they will be moving. And what you saw of all those people, all those Israelis leaving Tel Aviv, getting on whatever flight they could get out on, that's just going to be the tip. And I'm telling you, they're going to Patagonia. So I wouldn't want to be there for the next 20 years, except maybe to check in, maybe go do some fishing and get the hell out of there. Watch your 6.